1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I'm joined by a new voice on the air. I've got Jack McMullen. He is the voice of the Indianapolis Indians. He is a part of the Just Baseball show. He's a part of JustBaseball.com. He's a part of the Call Up Pod. You wear a lot of hats, Jack. How's it going, man?
A lot. Good, man. I'm tired. I'm kidding. We're good. It's a lot of job juggling during the summertime, but I wouldn't have it any other way because it's all baseball related and they all kind of intertwine, right? So I get to sit here and watch the Iowa Cubs for a week, and then I hop on your show and then hop on the Call Up and hop on the Just Baseball show and talk about what I'm watching on TV and what I'm watching in person. So it's awesome. But no, really appreciate the invite, man.
Yeah, this is great. We were talking before we hit record. Had Alex Cohen, broadcaster of the Iowa Cubs, on plenty of times on the show. He provides just awesome insight on the iCubs, whether it's over the offseason or during the season. He's terrific. I've had Aaron Layton, your colleague over at Just Baseball, on to talk about kind of the overarching view of the Cubs system from someone outside of the system's perspective. And that was terrific. But this week, I thought it'd be really good because Iowa was just in Indianapolis playing against your Indianapolis Indians this week. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to get your perspective of the Iowa Cubs roster and what we're seeing there from someone who's not necessarily covering the team on a day in and day out basis, because you probably have some differing opinions. So super excited to have you on the show. I guess we'll lead off here by I want to give you the chance to introduce yourself. I know we've kind of listed off where we can find you.
Yeah.
But how'd you get where you are now? How are you with the Indianapolis Indians? How are you with JustBaseball.com? Give me the rundown of yourself.
Good question. So I was born at Rush Hospital. I can start from the very beginning if you want. Chicago, born and bred. Grew up in Lincoln Park until I was 5. Moved to Oak Park. So kind of split my time between the north side and the south side. But 2017 was really the time that I cemented myself firmly as a Cubs fan and a White Sox fan, and decided that I wanted to work in baseball because I was interning with WGN in 2017. And I think that was the second to last year that WGN had broadcast rights to the Cubs and Sox, because Marquee launched in 2019, I think.
2019, it was right before COVID,
2019, right before COVID. So, 2017, I was an intern with WGN, and I sat in the back of the booth for Len and JD on the north side, and then Benetti, last year a Hawk, and Stone on the south side. And I was like, I want to do this. This sounds awesome. So got into that. I was in short season ball in Auburn, New York, in the New York Penn League with the Auburn Double Days in 2019. Nice. 2020 was supposed to be low A with the Padres, the Fort Wayne Tin Caps, but ended up calling a lot of video games and driving for DoorDash in 2020. And then 21 comes around, got the high A bump without leaving. Fort Wayne in the realignment went from low A to high A. And then at 22, I started with the Indians. I did, I think, 110 games in 22 and last year, and I'm up to about 125 this year. So this is year 3 as one of the announcers for the Indians.
Yeah, dude. I mean, sitting behind Benetti and Lynn and JD and Hawk and all those guys, that's incredible. That had to be just the coolest experience.
So my uncle, Matt Spiegel, is, PM Drive on 670 The Score. And I was like, okay, I want to do talk radio because I'm not even a hockey guy, but I saw him on the ice during the Blackhawks, dynasty runs and all that. And I was like, yeah, I really want to be on the ice for that moment and standing in the back of the booth while Pat Hughes calls Game 7 of the World Series. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do talk radio. So I show up at Syracuse, like everybody else. I'm sorry in advance. Show up at Syracuse, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do the talk thing. And freshman year, all I did was the talk thing. Then I interned with WGN, and I was like, I'd be stupid to not try and make the ballpark the office. So here we are making the ballpark the office.
Well, and now you kind of got the best. I mean, you're calling the games. The ballpark is your office, but you're also doing all the work for Just Baseball and the call up, and you're still talking about it off the field.
Yes, not a Yankee guy at all, but I said to myself in college, I was like, Michael Kay has a really cool job. Let's see if we can try and replicate that. Yeah. So I get to scratch both itches. And, when you're calling a game, you can't concretely say, yeah, that guy's really freaking good. But like on a podcast, you can sit here and say, yeah, that guy's really freaking good. And you can bounce around some other stuff. So it's just like, it's different muscles that you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And I love doing both because there's always an eye on both things where it's like, oh, you know, I'm watching a game. Hey, I love how Brian Wu was throwing for his first 3 innings before he got hurt again. But like, you know, I'm also listening to, you know, the local telecast, and it's like, okay, how can I improve what I'm doing in the booth while also watching Wu and ingesting that? So it really is like a best of both worlds thing for me.
Yeah, I last thing I'll say, I'll ask you on this, but it's like, I guess how on earth, how do you do it? Because I'm very honest on this show about like how I consume Cubs minor league baseball, right? Like
Yeah.
I there's games that I watch night in and night out, right? I'll try to tune in and watch the games live, but like most of the way that I like consume Cubs prospect action is I'll go back and watch the archived video of the game.
Yes.
And I'm like watching for specific things, right? I'm watching at bats. I'm fast forwarding 10 seconds at a time. I'm watching specific pitchers. Like that's the way I consume Cubs prospect action. So I can talk about it on this show, so I can write about it, so I can do whatever. But like if you're out here calling games for AAA,
Yeah.
you're on the call up, you're covering all minor league baseball.
Yeah.
You're on the Just Baseball show where you're covering major league action too. Like how on earth are you doing this, dude?
That's a great question. Thank you very much for expressing your incredulity with that. You punt sleep a little bit, but like I still try and get, 7-8 hours. I will say my mornings are like really important to me because that's when I get to play catch up. And on a given day, I'll start you like 7:00 when our minor league game starts, right? So we prep 7:00. We do that. I'm calling that. We get done. Say I'm out of the ballpark at 10.
Yeah.
I'm lucky I get to live downtown. But even if I hit traffic or something and it's 20 minutes, I pop on the end of an East Coast game on radio or the end of, Cubs on radio, and I'll listen to Pat and Ron. I'll listen to whichever game. I'll get home and I consume baseball through a starting pitching lens. Mm-hmm. And like everything kind of branches off the starting pitchers. So I'm going to pick the best West Coast game when it comes to starting pitchers.
Yep.
And I'm going to watch the hitters that are in that game. So I watch that. I'll like lock in on one West Coast game. And then I get up and I rip through those condensed games. And I go back, and if there's any notable prospect on the mound against, loaded lineup, I'll go watch those half innings. So I love my mornings because I get to rip through all the condensed games. And I do think that the condensed games on MLB TV are the best thing that baseball people can possibly ask for.
I was just going to say, whoever invented condensed games deserves the biggest raise of all time.
A Nobel Prize.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. It's amazing. That's how I keep up with just I'm not talking about it, but I'm just curious about what's happening in the maybe not the Angels or the White Sox, but like other teams. I'm curious about what's going on with other teams.
I don't know, man. If Ben Joyce threw an inning, I'll go keep tabs on that inning, how that went. So we'll see.
All right, man. Let's talk about the Iowa Cubs. What you saw this past week. I think that we're just gonna rattle through some names on this show. But I think that we would be remiss if we didn't start off with maybe the most exciting name to come up to Iowa, and that is Moises Ballesteros, because I think. We talked about it a little bit on last week's show because we knew that he had been promoted. We had heard rumblings that he'd been promoted when we were recording last Monday. And then by the time you guys were listening to the show on Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon, the word was actually like official. And so we covered the Moises Ballesteros promotion a little bit, but like what we saw from Moises this week in his first week of AAA action was downright ridiculous. Honestly, He posted a 350 batting average, 900 OPS, logged 20 at bats. He homered, he doubled. He caught. He showed off the glove behind the plate a little bit. He was fun, dude. It's great to see him up in AAA.
100%. Now I got a question for you before I really dive into the Moises Ballesteros thing.
Yeah.
Did you coin the nickname Mo Baller, or did somebody else?
No. I think that for those of you guys listening and follow Randall Sanders on Twitter, he was the guy I believe that came up with Mo Baller. Okay. I think he tweeted it out a couple times, and then we just ran with that puppy. Like it was say no more. Mo Baller is a top tier, like 80 grade nickname.
It is absolutely phenomenal. He popped a 107. I think it was like 427 feet, 427 or 429 to right center in, I think that was game 2, might have been game 3 of the series. But Howard Kellman, my broadcast partner, the voice of the Indians, been there for this is season number 48 for Howard. But he called the homer, and the first thing out of my mouth is like the color guy for the first or second inning was, there's a reason they call him Mo Baller. Like I love that nickname. But
it's great.
He was balling out, man, and like the way that I kind of ingested him was he is a ridiculously natural hitter. And there's nothing about his physique, his frame that will say this guy's going to hit 25 homers and hit 280 in the big leagues. But like some guys just have a gift, and he has an absolute gift. And watching his batting practice, it was relaxed, it was cool, and he was just ripping balls. And it seems like he's got absolutely everything under control in the box. And he hit 105 right back at Brent Honeywell's head in his AAA debut. And then, the next day it's 106. And then the next day it's 107. So he's getting good swings off and he's making hard contact. It seemed like every single night. And that's the kind of guy that I think will benefit from guys that are within the strike zone. And that's AAA ball. I know the walk numbers are high. I think that's an ABS thing, and I think that's going to correct. We're talking on the 24th. Second half starts on June 25th. We go to the challenge system full time. I think the Tuesday, Thursday walk fests are going to be a thing of the past. And I think that guys are going to, be willing to attack the zone. I think that might benefit him. And I think you could actually see an uptick in terms of production because he's going to see more pitches in the strike zone that he can do damage on.
Yeah, he's always been a guy that is worked counts really. We've been calling him the past couple of years as one of probably the most complete offensive player in the Cubs farm system right now. It's not saying that he has the most power. It's not saying he has the best bat to the ball skills. James Triantos exists in the system.
Right.
It's not even saying that he's walking the most of any player, but you combine all of those skills that he has, and he's the most complete offensive profile in the Cubs system. I think that it's hard kind of describing his combination of ability to put bat on ball and then also drive the ball. And I think that the best way I can describe it is he knows how to find a barrel. He knows how to find a barrel better than maybe anybody that I've seen in this system.
He's like this perfect blend of, natural feel to drop the barrel on the ball and also getting mass behind the baseball, getting mass behind the barrel and meeting that ball that's coming in hard, even though you've got the soft tossers, it's still 88, 89 miles an hour, and a breaking ball is about 81, 82. You can do damage on that. And he gets enough mass and enough power behind the barrel to really do damage on that. So if we're talking swing speed, I'm sure he's not in the 100th percentile, but he's certainly not in the first percentile. And man, I'm with you. He just has an innate feel to get the right part of the bat on the ball in the right count. And he's going to work ABs. He's going to pick up mistakes and he's going to hammer them, but he can also get a well-executed swing off on a well-executed pitch. And it's really hard to find guys that blend those two abilities.
So we're preaching to the choir here, I think, for our listeners in terms of his offensive abilities, right? Yeah. What'd you see from Moises this week defensively? Because I know that I tweeted out this past week, there was I think it was his first game behind the plate for Iowa. He threw out a runner at second base.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a pitch out looking. It wasn't a pitch out, but it was a high and outside pitch.
It was a perfect pitch to gun a guy down on.
Yes. And his arm has never really been something that's been in question when we're looking at his defensive profile. It's just kind of everything else. Yeah. What did you see from Moises this week defensively?
The arm looked good on the couple of samples that I saw. And again, I'm not in Alex's chair, so I'm not watching this guy operate every single night, but in the handful of opportunities that he had behind the plate to show me what he's got, he did a really nice job with the arm. I will say receiving looked like it was a work in progress. And there were a couple of curveballs that he tried to kind of snatch up and they snuck by. And I think he had a pass ball or two against him this week. I know for sure one, but there were a couple with nobody on that he was just kind of trying to snatch into the zone and it just wasn't really working. So I will say it's not, it's not Gary Sanchez. It's not a young Gary Sanchez, at least, where it's total liability and it's really just the bat and that's it. But the moves need to be better. And the thing is, I know Cubs fans really want an answer at catcher at the big league level right now. He's not that defensively, but if he's got half a season to work on this in AAA, and then if he starts next year in Triple as well, like I think this guy can make his way to being an average receiver at the major league level.
I think I've gotten a lot of questions about, given the status of Cubs catching behind the plate,
Yeah.
and given the fact that Moises is now in AAA, and the question's been, why is he not up catching for the Chicago Cubs right now? And it's like, I keep defaulting to, like, we might see Ballesteros in Chicago this year.
Yes.
I just, it's not going to be as an everyday catcher,
Right.
and there's plenty of holes that need to be filled on the Cubs roster, and a real nice bat would fill some of those holes, regardless of if he's playing catcher or playing DH or playing first or wherever the hell he's playing. I think we can be excited about his bat and be excited what his bat could potentially bring to the Cubs lineup later this year, potentially.
For sure.
Without being disappointed that he's not suiting up behind the plate,
Yeah, like listen, I'm excited about Caissie's bat too, and I know that we're going to talk about Caissie, but it's not like people are clamoring for Caissie to fill a spot right now when you got Bellinger and Wright.
Yeah,
like they're asking for Ballesteros because there is a deficiency behind the plate for the Chicago Cubs, and I love that you bring this up because I am of firm belief that big league struggles, big league situations should not impact your top prospects' development, and I echoed those sentiments, I think last week or late the week before when the Rockies called up Ariel Amador, who, kind of crazy. And we were super, super high on him at Just Baseball coming into this year because it looked like he had the best hit tool in the minor leagues. And he was so slow out of the gates, but he went on this insane tear. And then Brendan Rodgers hits the IL. I don't think that Brendan Rodgers' health should impact Ariel Amador's progression through the minor leagues. But the Rockies made Ariel Amador's major league debut the corresponding move for Brendan Rodgers going on the IL. And I don't think that's fair to Ariel Amador. I think it's awesome for him that he gets big league paychecks. But in terms of progression and in terms of success, he wasn't major league ready. Like he wasn't hot for long enough to be major league ready. And Ballesteros, you get him up there because Yan Gomes was DFA'd and Miguel Amaya is not the answer. And in 2 weeks, Nito may not be the answer. You get him up there. You have him catch 5 days a week. You are taking him and putting him in shark-infested water. Yeah. And that is not something that I need to see Moises Ballesteros go into, fight or flight mode here.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about Amador and the Rockies. You could have just said, but the Rockies, and that's right. It, because it's the Colorado Rockies. Yeah, dude, I think you nailed that though. I really think you did. I mean, it's frustrating. I think from whether it's fans of the major league team or fans of prospects or fans of minor league teams, because I know those are kind of two different groups of people.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating, but you're right. I don't think it does a whole lot of good for Moises Ballesteros besides him getting major league paychecks and him making a major league debut, Right. Yeah, I think there's other options in terms of catching help that they're not going to be studs. They're not going to be starters long-term, but I talk just so much on the show about Bryce Windham, and while also understanding what Bryce Windham is, right?
You mean the center fielder, Bryce Windham, the leadoff man, center fielder, right fielder, second baseman,
third baseman. It's I know what Bryce Windham is, right? I think that Bryce Windham has a really good feel for who Bryce Windham is. That might be a guy that fits better in terms of catching behind the plate in Chicago more than 4 days a week rather than Moises Ballesteros, even though you can use Moises' bat at DH. I don't know. It's just it's an interesting conversation to have. I do think that it's worth kind of mentioning Moises Ballesteros as a potential option later on this season
for sure
for the Cubs roster, because you got Owen Caissie and he's terrific. We're going to talk about him in a second here, but I think that I look at Moises Ballesteros and he's a guy that would hold his own offensively.
Yes,
in the big leagues, even if he struggles a little bit. You look at PCA, we were talking about PCA, and it's he's a guy that looks lost at the plate.
Yes.
And we kind of knew when he was called up that he wasn't going to take super smoothly to major league pitching and kind of hold his own and look like he belongs. He's going to go through some serious growing pains at the plate. Yeah. Moises Ballesteros is, even if he's not putting up a WRC plus above 100, he'll still kind of put together a bat. You're he knows what he's doing up there, man. He can do this. So that's worth kind of pointing out as well.
Yes, 100%. PCA, like, you also got to remember, he was not that good in his first 24 games with Iowa, and then he got up. He was bad. Like, he was bad. He got up. He struggled. He went down. He had an awesome week, and then he's up and he's struggling again. Like, I just watched Henry Davis. Really bad, optioned, not good for the first week, awesome for 2 weeks, go back up. It's still the largest jump you will ever see. Like, AAA to the big leagues, that gap in pitching has never been larger than it is right now. I mean, the guys that you're watching when you turn on an Iowa Cubs game and the guys that you're watching when you turn on a Chicago Cubs game, you can speak to it. Like, it is night and day, the difference in quality.
With all due respect to Thomas Pannone, who's been not as good recently over the past month, Thomas Pannone was great for the Iowa Cubs for the first couple months of the season. Was like really, really good. Thomas Pannone is not a
major league starter.
He's not. And so that's a pretty good example right there. Like, the Cubs have an example of what the difference between AAA and major league pitching is. I mean, we've kind of teased Owen Caissie enough. Let's go ahead and transition to Owen Caissie because Owen Caissie is a fun player to watch. We've talked about him plenty on the show. And for a while on the show, we've talked about the fact that, like, he's just hitting really well, but the pull side power has not shown up, right? I think we talked about that basically coming into the month of June. Like, that was the conversation that, like, hey, he's not really hitting for, like, power, right? He's hovering right around 300, which is crazy. He's hitting really well, but the power hasn't showed up. Well, this month, the power has shown up quite a bit more, which has been super fun. This month, Owen Caissie has 5 home runs. He has 3 doubles. He's slugging .465 this month of June. The season-long numbers are looking really good. 826 OPS. Strikeout rate now below 30% for the season, which is awesome. Walk rate above 15% for Owen Caissie. He's been really good, dude, and he's really starting to turn a corner, I think.
It was really fun, kind of coordinating with him and walking him up to sit down with Aram for, I think, 20-25 minutes on the call up, which was great. And, I was just sitting right behind the camera, just kind of taking it all in. And it's like, this is a 21-year-old that is so comfortable with who he is offensively. That was my big takeaway from this, where it's like, this guy has no, oh man, why am I blanking on the word? This is what we get for recording at 9 Eastern. I'm blanking on the word, that it's like you feel like you're not supposed to be somewhere, but you are there. Imposter syndrome. There's no imposter syndrome with Owen Caissie at the AAA level, which is so important to AAA success. For a young guy like that, if you have an ounce of doubt, you're not going to be that good in AAA baseball or in AA baseball or in high A baseball.
He's 5 years younger than the average player in AAA.
And he's got no doubt about his abilities. And that can be because an easy short swing results in 440 to the pull side in Louisville. It can also be because batting practice looks unlike anything else on that team, aside from Alexander Canario. Canario's batting practice is absolutely insane. But, like, the fact that it's Canario and Caissie that you sign up to watch and, like, you want to pay admission to watch their batting practice, like, that guy should have all the confidence in the world in who he is offensively. And we're seeing that, man. And, like, I saw him with an outfield assist, like a rocket to gun down Matt Gorski, who was trying to go first to third. He is looking the part of a guy that should be a September call-up. And I was having this conversation with Aram. I don't think it was on a pod. I think we were just talking on the phone. Like, class looks pretty thin in terms of rookie of the year next year. Like, Owen Caissie should be the rookie of the year favorite in the National League, unless there's a guy that's going to pop up out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, hey, Charlie Condon is up there on opening day 2, and it's Caissie and Condon's playing for Cincinnati. We have no idea what's going to happen there.
Yeah. You mentioned the interview that the RM did with Owen Caissie. I invite anybody listening, if you guys have not tuned in for that interview of the call up, it's one of my favorite interviews that I've heard, period. Like, I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was a phenomenal interview in general. When he started talking about his defense, like his defensive mindset, that was so much fun, dude. I love it.
It's just something that you never thought about when you were 12 years old. It's like, oh yeah, I was looking at bat path from right field, and like, it's like, oh yeah, it kind of stinks when they've got the matte black bat, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't see their swing path. I'm like, dude, I was just trying to survive and like not crap my pants in right field when I was.
I never thought about that. The black bat being tough to read fly balls. I wonder if all players. if all players think like that, then why is every batter not using a black bat?
I don't know. Good luck. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Baseball guys are weird, man. Like
Yeah.
sometimes they just want to use something else.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. But no, I thought that was interesting. We've archived that Owen Caissie is just getting better and better every single year defensively, to the point where like there's been a lot of calls for Owen Caissie, the first baseman, over the past several years, and it's just one of those things. Let him play. Let him get used to playing the outfield. The dude was taking fly balls in a warehouse up in Canada for his entire life growing up. You know that it's tough. It's tough to adjust to taking fly balls in general outside, to taking fly balls in ballparks where there's fans behind home plate. You know, it's just
And a
there's a
third
lot of
deck.
yeah, exactly. So it's difficult. So to see Owen Caissie improving this much, and we know he has a strong arm, right? So like to see him improving across the board defensively has just been so much fun.
You see guys like that, and you just immediately assume clunky. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to be clunky. You don't move well. You know it. He moves exceptionally well for a guy as big as he is, and not only do you see that on the base paths where he's an opportunistic base stealer, but you see it like he's smooth in the outfield. There are some routes where it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, you're trying to get used to it. Like there was a fly ball in the series opener on Tuesday where it was circuitous, but he camped on the track and like tried to make a jumping grab, and he had it, but it popped out of his glove kind of as his wrist banged against the padded wall. But it was like kind of a tough route to get there. He got there, and there are so many other balls that he looks so much more comfortable on. Like I think that guy can be a good corner outfield option.
The way he runs both on the bases and in the outfield, Owen Caissie reminds me a little bit of a poor man's like peak Chris Bryant on the way he moved. You know, like I think KB was much more fluid out there than Owen Caissie, but like it's that same vibe where he's a real big dude, but he can kind of move right. Like the first to third actions work on the base paths. Like he can go out there and go after it in the outfield. Like it's not KB, it's not peak KB, but it's like it's giving me that vibe to a certain degree.
And KB never looked big, right? He looked like he looked large, but he looked smooth. He never was like, oh yeah, you're too big to play third base. You're too big to move efficiently in a corner. Like he held his own. He fully held his own. And I think that's Caissie, where it's like he doesn't look overwhelmingly big for any spot that you put him at.
Yeah, I honestly, I'd probably trust Owen Caissie at this point. I'd probably trust Owen Caissie to be a average corner outfielder at the major league level over like Brennan Davis. I think that I'm more impressed with Owen Caissie out there than Brennan at this point.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed watching Brennan, and I had a good time actually sitting down with Brennan in Louisville earlier this month and kind of chatting with him right after that tear where it was like 8 homers in 8 games, and I was like, holy crap, dude, this is awesome. Offensively, that guy, he looks healthy, and I know that he missed week and a half. I think he's just getting bagged out. He keeps getting hit by pitches too, which is like a bizarre thing. But
his entire career, he's been doing that. Yeah,
which is crazy. But like, yeah, I could see it. The fact that they're even comparable, and Caissie's 21 years old and a behemoth of a person. Yeah. I mean, that bodes well in Caissie's favor.
Yeah. You mentioned Alexander Canario. I want to get your thoughts on Canario and Matt Mervis, because those are two guys that are kind of in similar situations in terms of like their role in the organization, right? They've both been up to Chicago. They've both performed maybe not the best in Chicago, but they're both. Canario's been terrific in AAA this year. He's been just downright good over the course of the season. Canario is in AAA. He got an OPS close to 900. He's I think leading the system in home runs still at this point. Last I saw, he's got 14 home runs in the system this year, which is tied with Andy Garriola for the most. He's been really good. Matt Mervis has been maybe not quite as good. He's been having a rough stretch over the past month or so,
for sure.
But we know what Matt Mervis has done in AAA over the past couple of years.
Yeah, so we'll start with Canario, because the way that I take both of them in is I think they're too good to be minor league baseball players. Like I think they're big leaguers blocked in the minor leagues, and that sucks. And Iowa is one of the few teams that has a bunch of those guys. Iowa has those guys. Norfolk has those guys. Baltimore's AAA affiliate. And there are very few teams that have that, like Oklahoma City with Miguel Vargas and with James Outman for the last bit. Like Dodgers
Michael
have
Bush
that
the past
issue
couple of
too.
years.
Yeah, Bush the past couple of years. Like, thank God Bush got out. Thank God Joey Ortiz got out. And I know that he's been awesome for Milwaukee. But, now I'm asking for the same thing for Heston Kjerstad and Connor Norby over there. And I just watched Kjerstad lace a double as he got recalled, before the game on Monday night. But, you've got guys over there that I'm just begging to get moved for greener pastures. I was asking the same thing for Nelson Velasquez. He obviously started this year really well. He was optioned on Monday. CJ Alexander, by the way, region guy, Merrillville, Indiana, and Ball State Cardinal. How about that?
Yeah,
Greg?
yep, exactly. Chirp, chirp, baby.
He's up, but it's guys like that I'm like, I hope you get a shot, if not with your team, then elsewhere. And I think that Canario and Mervis are in really tough situations where they get up, and if they don't OPS 850 right away, see ya. You're going back to Iowa as soon as that guy is healthy. And, it's good that your organization is in a spot where you need to compete with the best possible product instead of guys getting their feet wet. But Canario is a guy that is, I like to call him an A swinger. He's a guy that is going to get his A swing off, and he's going to rip a 114 or a 116, and it's going to be beautiful. But he's also going to swing really hard at a right-on-right slider, and it's going to look really bad, and that's okay, because he'll get him the next AB and he'll pop a 111, and you remember the 111. You don't remember the strikeout. So I do think that Canario can survive with the approach that he's got right now, especially because it's not egregious like a Javi Baez where you just throw him 3 sliders and it's done. Mervis is a guy that he's been under a lot, literally under. The bat's been under a lot of pitches since he was optioned again. I think that was early May, late May.
Yeah.
But he's starting to find it again. And those are both guys that can pop a 114, a 115. And, they do it consistently. They have good feel for the barrel. I think those guys are too good to be minor league baseball players.
Yeah, Matt Mervis specifically, I think it's got to be tough mentally for a guy to have to experience that at the big league club, get sent back down to AAA, where it's I guess partially there's nothing else to prove in AAA, and if you're not trying to prove anything, then what is all this about? You know what I mean? And he needs to prove it at the major league level. But now he's back down to AAA, and you can see it kind of wearing on him a little bit. Over the course of the season now, Matt Mervis he's been basically an average offensive performer, OPS plus of 103, just under 800 OPS overall. The numbers offensively in the International League are just night and day compared to the Southern League this year. I'm looking at the numbers here. I'm like, oh, this is not even making any sense compared to some of these Triantos and Matt Shaw and what they're doing in the Southern League.
It's amazing, man. So Major League OPS as it stands right now is I think it's 699, which would be the first time under 700 since 1980 something. I think 87 or 89 or something. Yeah. So you've got that big league number where the league average ERA I think is 3.9 and OPS is 699. League average OPS last time I checked in the International League was about 770.
771 right now, yeah.
771, and league average ERA in the International League is about 4.9. It's a run higher than it is at the major league level. It's just crazy, how you need to adjust your mental goalposts for each guy depending on level. But I love that point because I see a guy like that on every single team where all you're doing is waiting for the next major league shot. And there's nothing left to prove in the minor leagues, but you're hanging out in the minor leagues. So are you going to OPS 1,000 like Heston Kjerstad? Or are you going to do the Xavier Curry thing? Xavier Curry's in Cleveland, and Curry was up at the big club for the entirety of the year last year, had an ERA right around 4 as a swingman. In AAA this year, last time I saw him, and he's kind of settled in, but last time I saw him when Columbus came to Indy 2 weeks ago, Xavier Curry had an ERA over 9 in 30 innings, and he had allowed 15 home runs in 30 innings. So it's that's somebody that has nothing to prove in the minor leagues, and they're mailing it in until the next shot. And guess what? He got recalled, even with those numbers, because they know he's the next guy up. He knows he's the next guy up. I don't think that's the case with Mervis and Canario. I think their level of buy-in is a lot higher than that, and you can see that statistically, but it's a really tough spot to be in because you're in a place where you have nothing left to fight for.
Exactly. All right, man. I want to talk about a few of these relievers because that's for people to listen, that's our favorite topic on the show is talking about Cubs prospect relievers. That's what we do here. But the Cubs have a lot of really good relief prospects. That's not a lot of teams don't have a whole lot of stacked relief prospects, and I think the Cubs do right now, and especially up in AAA now. It started. Everybody started off in AA to start off this year. They've all since been promoted up a level to AAA. You got a front row seat to Hunter Bigge. And because Hunter Biggie's been injured for a lot of this season, we talked about the other guys. We talked about Arias. We talked about Porter Hodge. We talked about Frankie Scalzo plenty. We talked about Zach. We talked about those guys.
Yeah.
We haven't talked as much about Hunter Bigge because he's been hurt. Well, he is back, dude. Like, he's back, and he looked so good this week.
I was blown away. Like, it was mid-inning, and there's just a window pane. Like, I sit on the right side of the booth. And right across the window pane is the Iowa or the visiting radio booth. So Alex Cohen was literally like a foot away from me, just with a window pane separating us. And Bigge threw a curveball, and then he threw 100, and then he threw a slider. And, it was like, I think we were 7 or 8 pitches into the outing, and I just look at Alex and I shake my head. I was like, this is disgusting.
It's gross, dude.
And as soon as we get off, I tell Howard, because he closed the game. I tell Howard, my broadcast partner, I was like, that was foul, what we just saw. I mean, he was 99 to 100. It was Bayou. He's got that hard downer curve at like 82, 83 that plays so well off of a hard fastball. And that slider is disgusting, man. I mean, it's 88, 89. It's cutter-ish, like where it's got that baby cut and it does just enough to get under barrels. I mean, he's got 3 whiff pitches there. Like, that was taken aback, that kind of feeling with watching Bigge throw.
Yeah. Dude, I think that there's a good chance that he is throwing like meaningful innings in Chicago to end the season. Like, not coming up and doing what Porter Hodge has been doing, or even doing what Luke Little has been doing in Chicago. Like, coming up and like throwing the 8th inning of an important game, just because that swing and miss stuff is there from Hunter Bigge. And I don't know what the injury was earlier this year. I don't know what he was dealing with, but he looked this good in spring training too. It's not like he just came back from this injury. It's like, oh, like he can do this. Like, he is just progress, and each year he has just gotten progressively better and better and better. He's gone from being a guy that in college was throwing 91 to a guy that's now hitting 100 pretty often. He went from being a cutter guy to being this like legit slider type pitch. That curveball has always been pretty decent too. Like, it's just, every year he's gotten a little bit better, and now he's showcasing it at the highest level of the minors.
Yeah, I will say Bigge did something to me, like in terms of a reliever invoking that. Like, I've felt that with starting pitchers that I've watched. I'm like, wow, you are really, really legit. Like, Gavin Williams did that to me last year, where I was like, this is crazy. And about 4 innings in, I realized, I was watching a future like very good major league pitcher. In terms of a 1-inning spurt, it's kind of hard to invoke that feeling. Bigge did that. I will say one of the very few other guys was when I was out on Cape Cod in 2018, and George Kirby was closing games in Harwich. And I'm not comparing the two, because Kirby was a starting pitcher that was just like closing games, and Bigge is going to be a 1-inning guy. But Kirby was that kind of guy where I watched an inning and I took off the headset and I was like, that was just different, and that was overwhelming, and nobody can do anything about that.
Yeah.
So like that was fun to see. But yeah, man, like, I don't know. Arias, if you don't mind me bringing up Michael Arias here, he didn't really wow me in the way that I was hoping for him to. Like, obviously the fastball's got life. We know that. The changeup, it was always arm side. He was always leaving it arm side. And if you can't command that changeup, like, what's the point of having a really, really good changeup? Because it's really good when it's in the strike zone. And, the
movement on it is terrific. The tumble on it is terrific.
It's disgusting. And, we were sitting here watching that outing, and I was just like, okay, he put 2 or 3 changeups in the strike zone. And I said, that's really good off of a mid to high 90s fastball. But there were way too many changeup misses for me to think that, he's going to be a guy that can settle in and work a stress-free high leverage inning.
He's too often arm side misses with the changeup, and he's too often glove side misses with the slider.
Yeah.
He's yanking the slider too much, and he's missing inside with the changeup too much. And it's like,
you know what that is? That's a really athletic guy that's still trying to find consistency with their movement.
Who's just out there chucking it. he's just and he's gotten this far, right? Like, he is a former shortstop that is now in AAA, a couple of years removed from transitioning to the mound, and he's so talented that he has just dominated during his time in terms of getting swings and misses, in terms of logging a lot of strikeouts. The command has never been good, but like he didn't need it to be good from Myrtle Beach up to AA Tennessee. Now he needs the command to kind of sink in a little bit more.
Yeah, because guys are disciplined now, and they see a good changeup that dives low, they'll spit on it and they'll tip their cap, but like they're not going to chase it and tip their cap. And at the lower levels, you'll run into that. At the highest level of minor league baseball, you've got guys that have been around for a while that are just hanging out.
I guess one more guy I want to talk about for sure as far as relievers go. You got to see Ethan Roberts, I think, a couple times this week.
Yeah.
And again, this is another guy we talked about on the show last week, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but like, it's cool to see Ethan Roberts. He was just added to the 40-man roster in Chicago. What'd you like about Ethan Roberts this week on the mound?
Breaking ball, man. Like that's a very athletic guy. You can tell with the way he moves. He's in control. You know, Arias is a very athletic guy that seems to, fall out of control in his delivery. Roberts is an athletic guy that has found consistency in his delivery. Now, he doesn't have as lively a stuff as an Arias does, but I mean, that breaking ball, like he wasn't flipping it in, like he was spinning it in, and he was getting a lot of whiff in zone, and he was getting a lot of ugly takes on pitches that, felt like they were right down the heart of the plate. But I mean, he can really, really spin that thing. And I know the Cubs are looking for ample bullpen help. Like it seems like he's a guy that can get up as soon as they feel like he can handle, whether it be back-to-back nights, off of a surgery like that. Like, there are checkpoints I know every organization has for guys to be deemed big league ready. And I'm sure he's still checking some of those boxes, but as soon as he does, he's absolutely worth a look because of how good that slider looks right now.
Yeah. I want to open it up to you. Any other names that kind of stuck out to you during your time watching the iCubs this week? If not, that's fine, but I just kind of want to open it up to the rest of the roster here.
I love Luis Vasquez defensively, man. I love him. And I know that you guys probably talk about him all the time, but I was chatting with Marty Peavy. I introduced myself to him, and I was like, Vasquez plays a hell of a shortstop, huh? He said, how about him at second base, man? And I was like, yeah, he's really good there too. Thing is, you have a really good defensive shortstop and a really good defensive second baseman, assuming full health. Like, there's just no space there because there's a financial commitment there, and they're really damn good at the major league level.
Well, apparently, even if there is not great health there, he's still not going to get some run at shortstop or second base in Chicago, because we saw that. We saw Dansby go down. We saw Nico go down, and Luis Vasquez was still not getting playing time in Chicago, which is wild, but I digress.
I know, just crazy. But, like, that guy, I really do think that glove is good enough to keep him on a major league roster for – a long time. Like, I think enough to hit free agency, where I think he can get 6 years of major league service because the glove is so darn good. And it's really just about putting the finishing touches on who he is as an offensive player. And it doesn't need to be 20 homers. It doesn't need to be hitting 300. It can be a blend of a little bit where you pop a few out, you hit 260, you hold your own, and you are an elite late game defensive option. And you can give guys a day off their feet, and you can play a hell of a shortstop. And I think that's exactly who Luis Vasquez is.
Yeah, we stand Luis Vasquez on this podcast, especially because it's. I've talked plenty about how difficult it is, from my perspective, to keep track of what's going on defensively for certain prospects, because I'm not tuned in for. I'm not tuned in for the games, and so it's hard to watch the defensive abilities of certain players. You don't need to be for Luis Vasquez. like you can just watch him move at any point. And it's like he can go out there and pick it at shortstop. You got to see Cole Roeder go out there and he went yard this week, which is fun.
He's toolsy. He's toolsy, man. He's fast, and he packs a punch. He packs more of a punch than you would ever expect. And he plays at a very high speed, not an out of control speed, but he plays at like a comfortably high speed, which is awesome. And like, I don't know if there's a big league opportunity there, but should be with some organization. And
he's reined it in quite a bit. I mean, if you look at Cole during his time in the lower minors and you look at Cole now, he is matured as a player, and you could there's a lot of PCA in him when he was in the lower minors. And now he's still got that fire, he's still got that spark, but he knows how to rein it in a little bit more, which is good to see.
I appreciate that.
All right, man. Any actually, I wanted to kick it to you one more thing. I mean, you're with the Indianapolis Indians. You're with the Pittsburgh Pirates is the Indians affiliate. What Pirates prospects should we keep an eye on? Because there's plenty of people listening to this show that are Cubs prospect people, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of people here that are just prospect followers in general, and they're just looking for guys to keep an eye on throughout all of Major League Baseball. What Pirates prospects should we keep an eye on, especially because it's within the division? We need to keep an eye on these guys.
For sure. There's this righty with a cup of coffee in the big leagues at this point now. Skeens, big guy.
I'm not familiar with him. What's his deal?
He sits about 87, 88. Really just kind of a sinker changeup guy.
Crafty.
crafty righty, Paul Skeens. No, man. So I would say Braxton Ashcraft looks like he can join them very quickly. And that's a big guy, throws hard. He gets a lot of ride at the top of the zone where he's, 96, 97, popped a couple 98s in Jacksonville and has a curveball that works off that so well, where it really, really tumbles. He's trying to feel for the changeup, but fastball, curveball, slider plays at a very high level. Could play in a bullpen, but he's been an innings eater at this point. I don't know how much longer he'll go this year because he's already at a career high in the innings. He was a guy that, was hit with COVID, like the COVID season where he was a high school guy. Before that, short season in 19, dealt with an injury in 21, Tommy John in 22, and then came back middle of 23. So it's been a very weird progression for him, but he's eating innings in a way that I think they were hoping he wouldn't. So we'll see if they want to taper him off a little bit, but that is an arm to watch in the future. And a guy that I got to see at the back end of 22 that's set to come off of rehab pretty soon. He's rehabbing the complex right now. Mike Burrows, right-hander. I don't know if you remember anything about him, but that's a guy whose fastball plays so like an electric fastball, a really good breaking ball, and a really good changeup against left-handed bats.
Is he a guy that's a relief type arm?
No, he's a starter. I do think that he can be in the rotation. I don't know if they need him to be in the rotation, especially off of Tommy John. I could see him debut as a really good relief option because, who's to say 97 can't tick up to 99 like Kyle Nicholas?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Another Ball State guy, right? Kyle Nicholas.
Sure.
There you go. All right, man. Cubs, Pirates, who finishes with a better record in the major leagues this year? That's as a Cubs fan, that is like that pains me to say that, given expectations at the beginning of this year for each of those teams. But who finishes with more wins?
I know, man, that's so hard. I'm gonna go with the Cubs because I just believe in their offense a little, which is crazy to say right now, like absolutely insane. But Pirates are dealing with their own offensive struggles. Skeens and Jones and Keller are stealing the show right now, but they're bullpenning it, and they've got Bailey Falter, who's really cooled off at this point. The bullpen, like Bednar just hit the IL. I think Holderman's awesome. I think Nicholas is coming into his own, but like, do you trust Aroldis Chapman to close games if Bednar's out for a month? Hell, I don't.
No.
At this point, in 16, I did. Yeah. In 24 with the Pirates, I don't. So I do think that the Cubs are going to make the moves they need to make to be contenders in a very bad National League this year. And the Pirates, like, I think they'll make some moves, but I think the Cubs will be willing to spend a little bit bigger, and I buy their deadline a little bit more than I buy the Pirates deadline.
What it comes down to is the Pirates are allowed to be a little bit more patient with what their current roster looks like for future years.
Yes.
The Chicago Cubs are rapidly approaching desperation mode as far as Jed Hoyer goes, I think.
I think so.
So I think that's what it comes down to.
Pirates are a year or two ahead of their window, quote unquote, opening. And they just extended Keller, they extended Reynolds. Like, they know that they've got pillars that are there for a bit. And it's, hey, what are we going to look like year two of Skeens? What are we going to look like year two of Jared Jones? And, everybody else kind of joins the fold, and we've got a fully fleshed out starting rotation. So I do think that the Cubs, like, their postseason aspirations are a bit more valid than the Pirates at this point. Although I think both of them, it's anybody's race.
Although, man, you get Skeens, Keller, and Jones on a playoff rotation. That's scary.
That's a hell of a wild card series.
That is a hell of a wild card series. All right, man. Go ahead and plug yourself. Where can we find you? Where can we find all the work that you're putting out there?
Oh man. All right. Jack _McMullen 11 on the Elon machine. I still call it Twitter. It's X, I guess. But go follow just BB _media on Twitter. And just baseball fan or just baseball show on Instagram, just baseball fans on TikTok. It's really tough. Like there are a lot of different usernames for all this. I wish it was just kind of uniform, but it's not. But yeah, I mean, when Iowa plays Indy, we're going to be watching that and talking about that. And yeah, go listen to all the other stuff. The call up, the Just Baseball show when you're not listening to Greg.
Appreciate it, Jack. Thanks so much for coming on. Everybody out there listening, appreciate you tuning in and listening to this episode. You can find us anywhere where you find podcasts, obviously, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart, all that good stuff. You can find us on the Northside Bound YouTube channel. Give us hit the subscribe button. Give us a comment below. Let me know what you guys are thinking about the Cubs system and the Iowa Cubs specifically. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll be back in your ears in one short week. Take care, guys.
Yo.